My father didn't even pause before saying it. The dining room smelled of rosemary chicken and overbaked rolls, the kind my mother insisted were artisan, even though they were always too hard at the edges. The chandelier above us flickered softly, casting warm, uneven light over plates we weren't finished with and conversations I wasn't part of. Dad lifted his glass, a half-finished beer sweating against his palm, and smiled that lopsided smile he wore when he wanted the room to adore him. "Some kids make you proud," he said. He paused for dramatic effect. "Others just take up space." The table burst into laughter. My uncle slapped his knee. My aunt snorted. My sister leaned into her boyfriend's shoulder, giggling. My mother didn't laugh, she just smirked, eyes drifting toward me like I was the punchline she'd grown tired of defending. I sat still. The fork in my hand trembled once, lightly tapping the plate. A whisper-soft sound no one heard except me. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just smiled. "Good thing," I said quietly. "I just got my own place 3,000 miles away. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. It means more than you know. My name is Marina Hayes. I'm 30 years old, and that night, the night my family toasted to my insignificance, something in me shifted the way coastlines shift after storms. Not loudly. Quietly. Permanently." My father blinked once, confused. It wasn't the reaction he expected. I never contradicted him at dinners. I never ruined his jokes. I never took up any more space than allowed. But that night I let a sliver of truth slip out. The silence after my sentence stretched thin. A thin, delicate thread. Then my cousin cleared her throat, trying to lighten the tension. "Wait. 3,000 miles? As in, actually moving?" "Yes," I said softly. "As in I leave next week." My mother scoffed. "You're joking. You didn't even tell us you were considering it." "Because they never asked. Because they never cared to." My mind drifted for a moment, memory rising like smoke. I was 9, sitting cross-legged in the hallway sorting my school photos. I had just gotten braces, my hair tied into 2 uneven braids I'd begged my mom to fix. From the dining room, Dad's voice floated out. "Marina? She doesn't take after us." He fills space in a strange way. They laughed then too. I didn't understand the ache in my chest back then. Now I did. Back at the table, I watched my father's jaw tighten around a smile. "Where exactly are you moving?" "Seattle," I said. "Job offer." My sister snorted. "Since when do you get job offers?" Dad chuckled. "Yeah, sweetheart. They must have been desperate." More laughter. More casual cruelty. I studied their faces, the people I had spent my entire life trying to impress, and realized how small they preferred me. My glass of water felt cold in my hand. Colder against my throat as I swallowed the truth that sat heavy there. "You'll never last out there," Dad added, lifting his fork again. "City will eat you alive. You're too soft. Too passive." "That's not true," I said quietly. But he was already talking over me. He always talked over me. I looked at him, the man who taught me to be silent, and something inside me hardened. Not anger. Not rebellion. Clarity. "I already signed the lease," I said softly. "It's done." My mother dropped her fork. My sister's smile vanished. My father's face drained of humor. "What lease?" he demanded. "The one for my apartment." "You're leaving the state without our approval?" "I'm 30, I reminded them. "That's not what I asked." The chandelier hummed lightly above us. The air felt thick. Too warm. Too crowded. No one noticed I wasn't eating. No one noticed my hands shaking beneath the tablecloth. No one noticed the tear I blinked away before it fell. "We raced you," my mother hissed. "This is how you repay us. By running away." I inhaled slowly. The breath scraped through my ribs like gravel. "I'm not running," I said gently. "I'm choosing myself." A hush settled over the room, the kind that reveals the truth of a family more clearly than any confession ever could. My father leaned back in his chair, studying me the way he studied broken appliances. Annoyed, inconvenienced, already deciding whether I was worth fixing. "So this is who you are now?" he asked. "A girl who thinks she's better than us?" "No," I said. "Just someone who knows she deserves more." My mother rolled her eyes. "Therapists talk." Maybe. But it was also true. The dinner resumed without me. Forks clinked. Wine poured. Laughter returned, forced, louder than before. I felt invisible in plain sight. When dessert was served, I stood up quietly. My chair made a soft scuff against the hardwood floor. "I should go," I said. Dad didn't look up. "Don't forget to take your leftovers. You know how you get when you're hungry." I stared at him for a moment, at the man who believed making me small kept him big. I didn't take leftovers. I put on my coat and stepped out onto the porch. The night air smelled like wet earth and cold pavement. Crickets hummed somewhere in the distance. A quiet world so different from the sharp noise inside the house. I walked to my car with my hands in my pockets, fingertips brushing the envelope I had tucked there earlier. The lease agreement. The plane ticket. The deposit receipt. Proof that, for the first time in my life, I had built something without their help. When I opened my car door, a breeze drifted across my face. Cool, grounding, real. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the rustle of oak leaves overhead. I remembered another night, me at 16 crying on the back porch after my father told me I was too much for this family. My grandmother had come out then, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and whispered, "You don't take up space, sweetheart. You make space warmer." She died 3 years later. Nobody ever said words like hers again. But I carried them with me, tucked into the quiet corners of my memory like a fragile, glowing thing. I opened my eyes. The road ahead was dark but open. The porch light flickered behind me as if saying goodbye. I drove away, slowly at first, then faster as the night unfolded around me, feeling something loosen inside me like a knot tied for decades finally giving way. 3,000 miles. A new table. A life where I wasn't the punchline. I didn't know what waited on the other side of the country, but I knew what I was leaving behind. And that was enough. Seattle didn't greet me with sunshine. It greeted me with rain, the soft kind that feels like a whisper more than weather. The cab window blurred with droplets as I pressed my forehead lightly against the glass, watching unfamiliar streets slide by in shades of gray and green. The air smelled different here. Salt. Pine. A kind of wet freshness that didn't exist back home. It felt like the world had rinsed itself clean just enough for me to breathe without apology. When the cab pulled up to my apartment building, a narrow brick structure wrapped in ivy, I stepped out slowly, ribs sore from the long flight, muscles stiff from sitting too long. I wasn't used to moving this far without permission. Without fear. Without someone narrating who I was supposed to be. The landlord, a soft-spoken woman with silver curls, handed me the keys with a gentle smile. "New beginning?" she asked. I nodded. Something like that. Inside, the apartment was small. Bare walls, empty counters, a window overlooking a courtyard full of dripping ferns. But the emptiness felt like possibility, not loss. Like quiet instead of suppression. I set my single suitcase in the corner and stood in the middle of the room, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant rumble of buses passing on the main road. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt mine. The first week was lonely in a soft, manageable way. I ate cheap noodles sitting on the floor because the table I ordered hadn't arrived yet. I drank tea from the only mug I owned. I answered emails for my new job, remote content editing, while curled up on a thrift store couch that sagged like someone had loved it before me. Every night, I opened the window and listened to the rain pattering against the metal fire escape. It reminded me of something I had forgotten in the noise of my childhood. Not all silence is punishment. Sometimes silence is healing. On the third night, I found myself replaying the dinner toast in my head. Dad's voice cold, amused, dismissive. The laughter. The way no one looked at me long enough to see the crack forming. I sat with that memory. For once, I didn't shove it down. I whispered into the empty room. I didn't take up space. I just took up space they didn't value. The quiet answered, soft and kind. 2 weeks later, the table I ordered finally arrived. A simple wooden one with rounded corners and a warm walnut finish. I spent an hour assembling it, the scent of fresh wood filling the apartment. Each screw tightened felt strangely symbolic, as if I were rebuilding something inside myself at the same pace. When I finished, I stepped back and stared at it. My new table. My space. My rules. My voice. A memory drifted in, me at 17 trying to speak during a family brunch. My father tapped his spoon against his glass and said, "Let the adults talk, sweetheart. Don't take up space you haven't earned." My cheeks burned at the memory. The ache was old but familiar, like touching a scar you'd forgotten you had. I placed a single placemat on the new table. A mug. A small vase with 2 daisies I bought from a street vendor. I sat down. And it felt like reclaiming a room inside myself that had been locked for decades. One evening, after settling into work routines and grocery lists, my phone buzzed with a message from my sister. Dad says you'll come crawling back within a month. He's betting money on it. I stared at the screen, a strange blend of sadness and detachment washing over me. I typed back. Tell him to save his money. I don't crawl anymore. Her reply came slowly as though she struggled with the words. It's quieter without you. Different. We didn't realize how much you did. I almost laughed. Not bitterly, just softly. How much I did. How much space I filled with things they never acknowledged. Solving conflict, cleaning the kitchen, remembering birthdays, holding the emotional weight no one else wanted. I typed. Take care of yourselves. I'm building something new. And I didn't wait for her reply. A month passed. Then I found a coffee shop on the corner of Pine Street where the barista remembered my order. I found a hiking trail that smelled of cedar and wet soil, the kind of place that made breathing feel effortless. I found neighbors who held doors open and smiled at strangers. I found evenings where I didn't feel the need to shrink. One Saturday morning I sat at my table, the one I built, the one I chose, the one no one mocked me for needing, and watched sunlight spill across its surface. I ran my hand over the smooth grain. This, I whispered, is what taking up space feels like. Not unwanted. Not burdensome. Not too much. Just human. If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. I didn't disappear. I didn't run. I didn't crumble. I simply chose a different geography for my heart. Distance didn't save me, but it gave me the air I needed to breathe myself back into existence. And now when I think of that night, the laughter, the toast, the smirk in my father's eyes, I don't feel small. I feel far. And being far feels like freedom. Sometimes space is where we grow.